What's going on, Chuck?
Not much.
What's up, Chuck? I know you always get. That's always fun.
I had a friend in high school. He all through high school.
Yeah, all through high school.
All
Was he that guy
school.
like you'd see? Is he like that character? You ever see Men in Tights?
Oh yeah.
Robin Hood, when hey, I bet. Oh, I hate that guy. You know what I'm talking about? That little scene.
No, he was always very subtle and shy about it. So, what's up, Chuck? Give me the little head nod.
Where'd you go to high school?
Biloxi, Mississippi, private.
Is that where you're from?
High school, yeah.
Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yeah,
Biloxi Blues.
Mercy Cross.
Mercy. I've never been to Biloxi.
Really?
No, never been down that way. Never. I mean, I've been to like New Orleans and stuff, but I've never been in like the Delta area of the Mississippi state of Mississippi.
That was my life. The whole coast. You very rarely went north of
There you go.
I-10.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like. So you're from the deep South, man.
Yeah, we pretty much, my life was the Gulf Coast. I mean, you went east, west, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida.
There's parts of Florida that are close to that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was only like an hour and a half from Pensacola.
Pensacola. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was only an hour and a half from New Orleans. So,
Really?
yeah. I mean, it was right in the middle pretty much.
So like, hey, we're going to New Orleans for the week for Saturday shopping or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and Mobile was an hour away. I went to college.
And
so.
when you left there, where did you go? What did you do then?
Well, when I left Biloxi, I went to South Alabama, University of South Alabama. At the time, nobody knew what it was. I was only about 25 years old. Now everybody, they were on ESPN playing football last night, so everybody knows South Alabama.
Where's
now.
South Alabama?
It's in Mobile.
Mobile. Okay.
Yeah. So they got a football program, and so so
Nice.
good game last night.
Oh, yeah?
55-3, they won.
What was your college major?
Marketing.
I
Yes.
didn't know you could like major and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like when I went to college, it wasn't like I didn't have this mentality of I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I'm going to go play basketball to the school that pays me the most money, and then I'm going to pick whatever my major was.
Whoever's going to pay you is the way to go.
Well, yeah, I mean that made sense. Obviously, I'm not going to pay for college if I don't have to. Of course, I went to a small school in Eastern Kentucky that was just, I mean, we had like 26 majors.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't much. I ended up in education and English. I was going to be a teacher.
Well, I mean, I guess for me, the default was business because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was broad enough. And at the time, when I was in high school, I was actually working at a bank.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So
like Joey did that.
Well, my grandfather and his brothers and family before him, they owned the bakery and restaurant right next to this bank.
Really?
Local bank that was right there that was expanding, and they were right there. At the building wasn't there anymore. They closed the business back in '73, but he apparently didn't like the fact that I was washing dishes and doing stuff, so he made a phone call and it's like, hey, can you interview Chuck? And so I ended up working at a bank through senior year of high school and my college. A lot of my college come home work seasonally, and so I realized real quick I did not want to do bank work.
Oh yeah.
I was so bored.
Oh my gosh. I
bored.
I never thought about working in a bank. I never thought about business in college either, which is funny because, I'm in my third business now, and it's like, I wish I'd have had some education in it going into it, because everything I've learned was kind of like the hard way. It was like what not to do.
Bank, everything was so clinical and just quiet, and it was just it was way too quiet, and I knew I didn't want to do finance because numbers drive me crazy, so that took accounting out. So next thing you know, it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be doing management, sales, marketing, which that's what I'm basically
management,
what I'm
sales,
doing
and marketing.
now. I'm wearing all those hats now.
Is that all you've ever done?
Yeah. I mean, I did sales for a while, and then I did some managed a large sales territory, and then now I'm basically running a business. So.
Yeah. So, when you what was your first jobs out of college?
Interesting you should say. you get out of school, and I had a few different offers, but they were nothing that I wanted to do. And so I kind of settled on the easy choice until I could figure out what I wanted to do. I sold copiers and office equipment, like high-end stuff. Like back in the day, like they would have these big postal systems they rent out like postage meters, and they have these elaborate systems, and you would have the old school fax machines, laser, really expensive, but the high-end copiers.
Right.
So that's what I did for 2 years, and it was interesting because I did that for 2 years, and I hated it. I mean, it was hard. I liked the people, I just didn't like the work. And the company I worked for, they were just trying to get established in that business, so I had to go cold call all day, every day.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I wasn't the personality type to do it, but I forced myself to do it. I think that's something you have to do sometimes to develop skills is there's skills hidden under that you don't know you have, that potential.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what if I just tried to do this for a while? I don't have to, but what if I made myself? And it really disciplined me to start cold calling, and I realized I was actually pretty good at it. And it helps you create some of those social skills like small talk and just finding commonality with people. And, I was already a people person, so it was good for me to have that opportunity to develop those skills. But I finally got good at it and started making a little money at it. And then I had the opportunity to go interview with Integrity Music that was in Mobile. And what they do is they do praise and worship music. They're really big back in the 90s. They were based out of Mobile.
Yeah.
And they had some openings for some of their sales territories because they had just started doing distribution internally. And they were trying to place, that's when Christian bookstores were huge. They were everywhere.
Yeah, I remember all that.
And so, everybody did Integrity. So I got in there, and I remember interviewing. This was interesting. I started interviewing with who was eventually going to be my top boss, Bob. And he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I sell copiers." And he looked at me and goes, "How long you been doing it?" I said, 2 years. He goes, "Okay, I'll hire you." I was like, "What?" Shortest job interview ever.
Wow.
Rocked it. He goes, "My wife sold copiers. I know how hard it is." He said, "If you've been doing that for 2 years, you can easily do this job." And that was it. And I got in there, and immediately the territory increased sales. I had like several states of Christian retailers I would work with internally, and place product and stuff, and backlist and new releases and all that stuff. And it was awesome because it was easy. It wasn't even a job. It was so easy for me.
You said, you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do. Was it so much that you knew what you didn't want to do? Because like you said, "Hey, I got a job. I took a job selling copiers," but you're like, when you got out of college, like, did you have an idea or direction? Like you had this vision, I want to be doing something this, or was it, I just want to do something that sort of is exciting?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I needed to develop some skills. And I'm like, so I'm always looking at, okay, what makes you more marketable?
I never had those thoughts. I never had those thoughts in college. I just didn't. I was like, I don't know where my brain was. Like it was literally like this. It was going in circles.
Well, yeah, we all are. I mean, we're like what young 20s. We're 20-year-old boys, and so what? Yeah, what do 20? Worried about what are we doing this weekend?
I mean, I got out of college was like, I was in college for 5 years, undergrad, and it was like the whole time the trajectory was I was going to be a teacher.
Really?
And yeah, I was going to be a teacher, right? And I got out of college. Spent 1 year working in a high school, and I was like, I am not doing this. This is not what I want to do. And left and just wasted 5 years of college thinking I was going to be a teacher and realized this isn't even what it's not even remotely what I want to do.
Well, I had the same thoughts halfway through college. I was like, maybe I'll go into education. And then I went and found out I was going to have to add a lot of extra time onto school because a lot of my classes I were taking were not going to transfer over, and it was going to add so much time. I was like, it was almost like starting over. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm good. And,
Well-
and in hindsight, I'm so glad I did. I didn't do it because that wasn't the right thing for me.
I wasn't prepared for that. Like, I think when you go into an educational field, it's so much better if you can bring in some actual wisdom with you. I didn't have any wisdom. I'm not saying
yeah.
I've got a lot now.
Well,
I was just saying I definitely didn't have any at 23. You know, it was like I'm not going to go very far because, like,
yeah.
you know, students can look at you and go, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about." You know, all right,
You
or
weren't-
know when
you,
you're
you
making
weren't
it.
gonna have that, oh, Captain, my Captain.
I don't know
moment,
how.
were you?
Not at that point. I don't know how my brother did it. My brother, I mean, he stuck through it. I think he just kind of he barreled through it for. That's all he's ever done. You know.
Some
We had the
people
same-
are
we had the
very
same degree.
tenacious. I think there's certain things. Everybody has tenacity, but I think you got to find what is worth it for you to. What will I walk over high? What am I willing to walk over high coals for? And what will I not?
I
you
just
know?
wasn't. I just felt like
Yeah.
there was more to the world,
Yeah.
and like I spent a year working in a high school, and then I did the smart thing and moved to New York City.
Okay.
I was like, I'm going to New York City. I wouldn't say it was smart. I had like $1,000 in my pocket, and just left.
Yeah, that won't get you too far.
It didn't last long at all. Not in New York. Not even back then. It was
Yeah.
like, but I made it work. I mean, I got up there and started this long adventure of that started in New York and eventually, I mean, I've done so many jobs. I've actually lost track of them.
You know, I'm the direct
You talk about
opposite.
developing skills.
I'm the direct opposite. I've only done a handful of jobs.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I just was never one of those people that just had that focus. But I'm like this. I mean, that's how I think anyway. I'm like, oh, squirrel. Oh, rabbit. It's always
Well-
something else. It's like to focus for me is work. Like I have to really work to focus. Like even to
Yeah.
talk, to listen is work because my mind is so active. I can talk better if I'm actually walking or driving because I'm moving. It's weird.
Yeah. 'Cause that's how I was when I realized. I realized real quickly. I was like, I do not want to work in a bank setting. I need something where I'm out about.
Yeah.
And
People. You want to be around people.
Yeah,
You're a
yeah.
people person.
yeah, and so what was interesting is I was only at Integrity for a year, just under a year, and they decided that their experiment of doing their own fulfillment and distribution wasn't going to work. They wanted to go through word distribution in Nashville. So I'm about to get married and about to be unemployed and lose a job I love, and about to have to go go tell my future father-in-law that I want to marry your daughter, but I'm unemployed.
About
I'm
to be
going to be
broke.
living in your basement. That's just what you want to hear. But no, what happened was I was very fortunate because I worked really hard, and I think when you develop those skills, one of the things that happened for me was they said, look, Word needs to hire some people up in Nashville. They need to hire some people specifically because the Integrity catalog was so big. They needed extra salespeople, field and internal, for distribution. So what I did, put my name in the hat. We decided, hey, it's about 2 months before I get married, but I could move up here, get established, get an apartment, go back. We'd get married, Mobile, go on the honeymoon, pack her up, move her up. So it was a real whirlwind. Is all the stuff they tell you don't do. The first year you get married, me and my wife checked off like all 5, like moving, starting a new job, all the stuff.
Noob City.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
all that stuff. We basically, I think there was like when we go through the counseling when you're getting married, it's like all the 5 things you're not supposed to do. We ticked off all 5 like immediately.
And you're still married though.
Yeah. She
Maybe
hadn't
those
killed me
counselors
yet.
don't know what they're talking about.
Yep. So well, I guess this year will be 27, but coming up, but 27 years. So So the hard part for me was willing to stick my neck out because it was like, okay, we could always move home if we wanted to.
Right.
Give it a year or two,
Yeah.
see how it goes. So we're like, Nashville's fun, and this was back in '96. So obviously Nashville hadn't experienced the boom. It was growing, but it's not like it is now. And so we moved here, and we've never discussed moving away since.
Just loved it.
Yeah, yeah, and it was awesome because it was a great opportunity. Because speaking of, they needed people, and so I put my name in the hat. I was one of 4 people that was able to transfer up, and everybody else, when they shut down distribution in Mobile, we moved up here. And what was awesome, this was one of the things, you never know what God's got out there for you unless you really try. This was what was really cool is I got up here. And I was working internally for about a year, and I got promoted to field, which meant that I was working 3 states. At that point, I don't think anybody had been promoted internally like that. After that, people they opened the door for them to look internally for some talent, but field guys normally came in from other areas or other companies. And so I went from internal to field, and I had 3 states worth of retail stores that I was overseeing. So I'm, late 20s, and all of a sudden it's funny because my trajectory, it's funny because I always loved music, always listened to music.
Yeah.
Not musically inclined. I don't play, but I've always listened to music, and so much so that my friends were always like, "Oh yeah, you're going to work for a record company when you get out of school," and I always dismissed it. I was like, "Yeah, no, that's never happened." It was so funny that's what I ended up doing.
What record company?
It was Word. It was Word distribution because.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, what was so cool about it is even got to say that I was a part of the marketing and distribution for a #1 record across the country, because Sixpence None the Richer was one of the groups that we had. And of course, Kiss Me was all over.
Oh my gosh,
it's still
huge.
all over the
radio.
radio.
Oh my gosh, it's early 2000s gold.
So I got all these platinum and gold records at home, and stuff, which is really cool. But that one is the one that is the most awesome, because I'm like, oh my gosh! Not only were my friends right that I working for a record company, but I ended up being a part of marketing and distributing and selling. Had a small part of just being a part of that whole machine that put out a #1 record.
Wow.
So I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in a lot of movies too.
Oh my
That
gosh.
song is
I heard it on the radio yesterday.
you can't go long and not hear that song, especially if
Yeah.
you're listening to some 90s stations or something, some playlist. It'll pop up. I was going to ask you, man, you've had some doors open, and something I would like you to kind of maybe chime in on is how much. There's a saying, chance favors the prepared mind.
Did you write that?
No, I think it was Louis Pasteur said that. I would like to take credit for it, but I'm not.
It sounded like you.
It does sound good, right?
That's what you usually.
No, it's actually I think it's a quote from Louis Pasteur or something. And what that means is that opportunity opens for people who have been grinding, who've been putting in the work. And you said you were developing skills.
Yeah.
You were developing certain skills. Instead of, there's so many people that kind of sit back and wait for things to come to them, but that's not really how it works. It's like you've got to, your idle time really does need to be filled with development of some kind. And like you said, well, I need to get good at cold calling. I need to develop this skill. I need to develop how to talk to people, because that is a huge skill that people don't have. At least, especially in today's world. But one of the things I wanted you to kind of maybe think about, maybe you haven't thought about it, is how much did all of that work, those little day in, day out, skill sets that you were working on, when the time came, those doors opened much easier than if they didn't,
Well, people notice that's one of the things I noticed is when you're working, and obviously maybe not every setting is set up this way, but generally, by and large, you do a good job. People are looking at you for what can we give you more? What if you're developing those skills and you're producing, it's all ROI. And so much of mine was ROI. It's like, okay, this guy's got, he's young, he's got a lot of upside. People took a chance, and so part of it is you don't want to fail those guys because they stuck their neck out to really give you a shot. But I think people respond to that. They're watching people who, if you're whatever role you're in, whoever's over you is watching.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad thing. It just means that they're like, man, this person's really got a lot of potential, and you really want to take advantage of that, especially when you're younger.
I think so.
I'm playing the back nine now, so I'm turning 53 this month. But it's I mean, not even like with me, I'm looking at guys that, as I try to expand my business and stuff, you're looking at people and you're like, okay, this person's got a lot of potential, or this person has the skills, and you recognize some of those qualities in people, and I think people are looking for that. But I think that and for anybody who's listening who's younger, networking is such a huge thing. It's all, I mean, you can work really hard, but a lot of it is who you know.
I honestly,
it's 50-50.
I've never been hired off my resume. Not that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even though I've got I think a long list of impressive jobs, it's just, it's just a piece of paper. And at the end of the day, it may get you in the door. At today's, with the automation that's out there for resumes and applications, like, you can get tossed to the side before you even get through the first barrier.
You're just a piece of paper.
But it's like in the business world, and I've learned this a lot, is that it's all recommendations. It's like, or you just happen to maybe interact with this person at church, or you see people here at the comic shop, and you're like, oh, let me get to know you better.
It's all relationships.
100%.
Everything. If I could go back, I was very shy, very quiet, and again, that's why I chose the cold call route, because I knew I had to do that.
You were shy and quiet?
I was. Yeah,
wow.
I was painfully shy and quiet.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awkward. I was awkward to
Never
myself.
would have thought that.
I
always thought you would have got walked in and went jazz hands.
Jazz hands. Yeah. I think when you're around people you're comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was but I think as I got older, it was probably like late high school. I mean, from then on it was not that
when I
was younger, I was very painful.
I was always so goofy. Imagine that. Always so goofy. I was tall and skinny, and I had big ears and big old glasses. So early on in life, I was made fun of a lot. And then I think through the high school days, I really learned to like own my awkwardness. And so I wouldn't let it affect me more. And
that's funny.
When you're 6'7" and you've got
no one's
twin,
picking on you now,
and you got a twin, and you walk into any place with a lot of people, we're the first things you get noticed. And like at some point, you develop a little bit of a chip on your shoulders. Like I walk in like this, and then I can't tell you how many times so many people who I've met, who I've eventually become good friends with, have said, "I didn't like you at first. I thought you were arrogant." And I was like, it wasn't so much about arrogance; it was just a defense mechanism. But I mean, I was never really. I wouldn't say I was shy. I mean, I had insecurities as much as the next person, but it was like you kind of develop certain things. For me, it was sort of out of self-defense.
Yeah.
And it sort of got me a long way. But, I want to kind of circle back to something you had said when you're working for people is, this is something I can take credit for. Actually, my brother told me this. You either make people money or you cost people money, and it's just one or the other. And when times get hard, who's the first people to go? Are they valuable enough to keep around? Or if they are looking to advance their career, move on to something else, are you worthy of a recommendation? Because if I was to recommend you for a job, and you mess that job up, it's like, that's as much on me as it is you, because I recommended you. Do you think that guy's going to take my recommendation and going forward? I remember when I first went to New York, and I was like, why can't I just get somebody to just give me a hookup? I remember having those thoughts, like, why can't somebody just, like, I had a mentor who knew me, but he wouldn't just put me in any situation. And I never understood that for a long time. I was like, why don't you just help me get the door open? And part of that is they wanted me to do it on my own, to learn to do it on my own. Because there's value in that. You can't always have the road prepared for you. The other part of it was, I realized, was it's as much his reputation as it is anything, you know,
Mhm.
and that's
Absolutely.
big, especially in a place like New York, you know, because you got to be able to trust people, and it's hard to trust people in business. Which leads me to my next thing: how'd you get into your own business?
Well, it's interesting. This is a good segue because, I mentioned before
Yeah.
the need to stretch my skills. Well, that time came again.
Mm.
I mean, the job I was doing was something that the guys before me had been doing it for years.
Mm.
Some of them their whole life, and they were getting close to retirement. So it was a great thing. But I knew enough to look ahead and say, you know what? My job is not going to be here in 10 years.
Mm.
Because I realized, because I was so much into music, I knew, we're talking about this is like 99, 2000. I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, I've been doing this a few years. I love it. But the secular music industry did not have an answer for digital delivery of music.
Mm.
That's where iTunes took
Right.
advantage of that opportunity, and that's why you had all the pirating and all the stuff that was going on online at the time. People doing all that, getting their music, and so there was no answer. And they always would say the Christian music industry was 10 years behind the secular music industry. So I thought, okay, this is not a good sign. And what was interesting was my sales were going up every year, but yet every year they were having layoffs of the sales force, and it was contracting. So all of that, I started saying, you know what, I need to have a short-term plan of what I would like to do in the next couple of years. Because I told my wife my job wouldn't probably be around in about 10 years, and I was close. It was 15 years. I think they shut that distribution system down. And it was it's hard because I didn't want to be there and watch something that you love. And again, that's the problem. That's the great thing and the horrible things about technology is you're watching stuff go away that you love, and the delivery systems are different, but that's business. And so I thought, well, I need to have an opportunity to stretch myself again. So, being a glutton for punishment. What happened was my father-in-law was starting a company and had asked me to come on board to help get things going because I was more of the business mind. And so it was a field I knew nothing about. But again, the opportunity to run a company, there was business already coming in and things were starting, and the structure was there, so it wasn't like I was just coming in totally cold. There was a plan there. So fast forward, started doing church consulting, where we go in and help churches raise funds. Churches, when they're doing expansions, they're doing building expansion, they need capital to raise capital outside of what they're normally funding with their budget. So I went in and did a deep dive and started learning about that whole market and that whole service and delivery system. And we've put together, it's been 23 years, over 23 years ago I started doing this. And in 2009, I took ownership of what we were doing. And so basically it's been my thing since 2009. And but I've been doing this for over 23 years. But it's interesting because we're such a niche. It's a service we're providing. It's not a good.
Gotcha.
We're marketing, but it's a service. But we're consulting. But having to get in there and learn how to run a company, learn how to fulfill, and learn how to take a deliverable service and streamline it and change over time, because churches have changed over time. The last 23 years, the way churches do things. So it's been interesting to evolve, and so it's been great to have that and be able to shape it, make it your own. Have something that you can build. That's what's been fun about this. Is it's like it adds a whole nother level of stress because it's your neck on the line, you're doing it, but at the same time there's an incredible amount of fulfillment in knowing that you're creating, you're doing
master
something.
of your own destiny.
Yeah, you're not going to have somebody come in tomorrow and say you're we're going to have to lay you off. But at the same time, sometimes I have to have that talk with myself. It's like you go through a slow time, and, when you're a small business owner, you're the last one to get paid.
Yeah.
So, but it's been fun to be able to create and to learn. And again, I have to sell and market and manage. So
that's the cool thing about being in business. You're the master of your own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're not relying on somebody else for your, basically, to control. Like, it's like, I remember, you probably never lost it. You ever lost a job? Like, other than like, hey, then this business is shutting down, but like,
yeah, not as far as like somebody coming in like you're out of here.
I got laid off once from a job that I loved, and I didn't know what to do, and I never intended to start my own business. Like, I was like, that just, to me, you might as well ask me to fly to the moon. Mm-hmm. And but once I kind of got into it, I was kind of, why did I ever do this to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a girlfriend years ago that was like, hey, you should start your own business. And I like, why would I start my own business? Like,
yeah,
I don't know what to do about that. That to me was so nebulous. Like, I just couldn't think to do that.
But once you get there, you can't think of doing it another way.
Well, it's like it has its trade-offs,
sure.
Right? Like, you're really never off work.
Yeah, that's true.
You're never off work, and you also you don't know where your paycheck's coming from, really. Like, it's never guaranteed. You sign those contracts, you get some steady income coming in. You can guarantee it to a point, but you really don't know. I mean, we went through you went through some really. Actually, I'm kind of flabbergasted that you started this in 2009. Started this thing at the tail end of a recession.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. But same time, it's like, and you've already gone through another one with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, had to shut down.
Oh, churches were shut down forever. I mean, the thing for us is getting back. We were working in states that opened up quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go where the opportunity is. That's the lesson, kids. As a business owner,
that is true. You go where the opportunity is. I think that's why I still work in Georgia a lot.
Yeah,
because there's still opportunities to work down there.
Since COVID, I would probably tell you there's probably about 6 or 7 states that basically keep us totally busy.
Yeah,
and those are the ones that were bounced back the soonest, or are experiencing the most growth.
Well, my point is that there's safe ways in life. You can go get a job and get a 9 to 5, and you have a steady paycheck and insurance, and for the most part, you're pretty. All you gotta do is show up and do your job, right?
Yeah,
you get paid.
See, that's boring to me now.
I know, it's like,
what'd I do with all that free time?
So it depends on how your mind works. I guess.
Yeah,
Some people just value free time, but like, I think there are, when you go to start a business, like, there's so many different ways you can go into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't think you really set out to go, hey, I'm going to go into business for myself. You're right. You're probably like me. You're like, oh, I just need to kind of find out what the next thing is.
Yeah.
But then you realize, like, when you do get into starting your own business, all the opportunities that exist now that you kind of didn't see before. Like, oh, I can create this. I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
The money can be better, you're sort of the master of your own time, which is invaluable. Those are the things that when I started doing business for myself, I kind of wasn't aware of, because I was so used to like, hey, I got to be at work at this time, I get off work at this time, I get my weekends off, this, that, and that.
Sure.
But one thing I did realize really quickly was how easy it was, if you don't manage yourself well, how quickly you can slip into oblivion, basically. Because, I mean, even though I was like, I didn't have to punch a clock, I had to go to work at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
I had to I had to discipline myself to do certain things at a certain time, or I wasn't going to get them done. And it's real easy to fall back. I think that's some of the things that I'm talking about with, like, when it's starting your own business, how tough it can be in some respects, but also rewarding in others. Like, there's a trade-off.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's yours.
Yeah.
It's
You do get to
not
create
like
something.
Well, yeah, it's not like you're putting in the time, and then the hard part for me is not knowing. I think I always was. It's probably the insecurity of my youth, but not knowing where you stand with somebody. Like, what do they think of me? Am I doing a good job? Am I not doing a good job?
Yeah.
Are they
I've
mad?
been in that spot before. Am I going to keep this job?
Yeah, yeah, and what I wanted to mention too is when I was getting, I guess I was talking to a friend of mine. We grew up together. He's got a CPA firm in Charlotte, and he was talking about some of his. He was like, "What would you ever do if you left what you were doing now?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Ooh, good question.
I don't know. I don't know what I would. I think this is kind of what I'm locked in to do for what I'm wired to do now because I've been doing it for so long and have that experience. And he said, "Yeah," he goes, "I would always caution you whenever you think of where we are in our lives. Like he's my age." He said, he's got a couple of clients that they sold their company or they decided they wanted to transition to do something different career-wise, and he said they are a year into it and they're just lost. They're not really sure what they want to do still. They're still trying to figure it out. And he said, "Yeah, your challenge," he goes, "just something maybe to keep in your mind." That registered with me because this was several years back. He told me this, but he said, if you ever get in a position where you decide you want to make a change, he goes, make sure you know what you want to do before you do it, because after being your own boss for this long and doing your own thing, he goes, they can't go work for anybody anymore. He goes, think about it. You've been doing this long. He goes, it would be really hard to go work for somebody. I'm like, you know what? You're right, because you've got this thing that you shaped. I think that's what, even before I owned a company, I would work at companies, and I think we're all like this. Any of us who are kind of analytical, we're problem solvers, and we look at things and say, there's a better way to do this, a more efficient or effective way to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you're being disrespectful, you're not speaking out, but you're thinking to yourself, okay, this could be done easier, but you have to follow the lead of your management,
Right.
of your leadership.
Right.
So now fast forward, I'm kind of in a position where I've been doing this for 23 years and leading out, and like you said, master of your own,
Fate.
the fate. And so it would be really hard for me to go back now and look at, be on the other side of that and have somebody saying, this is the direction we're going. And what happens if you're like, man, you're really about to make a mistake. Is this really a good idea? It would be hard to be, after being a business owner, it'd be hard to be on the other side of that and to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To kind of take, how do you process that?
What would it take for you to do that though? For you to stop doing your own business and go work somewhere else?
Oh, I'm not even there.
Yeah. You seem so busy.
Yeah.
I know you went through some tough, you've been through some tough times. It's been a tough couple of years.
Oh yeah.
First you had 2 years of no work, had to sell off your prize comics to kind of make ends meet. And
COVID was
tough.
shut the company down for most of a year.
Yeah. And then you've had a tough year this year.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the cancer, the lymphoma,
Mm-hmm.
and so I came off the road end of January, and I'm just in September started kind of getting back to trying to get back to
You had
normal.
said something to me it wasn't too long ago, where the concern, I can't remember how you worded this. The concern was you're so ingrained in what you do in your business that you not being there affects it. You said something to that effect.
Well,
which is sometimes when people look at businesses, their businesses are built around them, and if you take them out of the equation, the business is gone. And then there's some people that build a business where it's like process based. So if the owner was not to be there, it would still run.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually curious about like what you meant by that when you said, hey, like there's a point, like you said you need another you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think having more like me, because we have a small staff, and the good thing is we've all been working together for so long that me being out of the picture for 6 months or so, 7 months, they were able to run everything without me.
Right.
I was doing that was the blessing in all of it but what I started realizing was growth for me, because we're such a niche service, is hard, because I would like to replicate, bring on people to replicate what we do, but our service is so specialized because, first of all, we work with churches, so there's some understanding of church and understanding the inner workings of a church, how a church runs, understanding church culture. But then there's also the whole thing of just kind of being able to have the ability to sell and to be able to be a detail-oriented person, because you're fulfilling. So it's not like we have somebody sells, somebody fulfills. You're wearing multiple hats. And so what's been hard for me over the years is to find the guys that can wear multiple hats. You have to be very malleable.
Yes.
And so that's what's been hard for me, is like there'll be some guys that can come in and handle certain areas, certain aspects, but can't necessarily handle all of that.
Yeah.
And to really thrive, you have to be able to handle all of that. And so that's why I think, talking about how I've kind of stretched myself, it's like, you have to go out and you have to develop leads and you have to develop a network. And, obviously after doing this 23 years, you'll have people call you.
Right.
And relationships, go back to relationships. It's like, you've been doing this for a while. People are like, hey, so-and-so said I need to call you.
Right.
Or I have a friend of mine. Or
referrals are huge.
Or somebody I've worked with years ago, they're at a different church and they call you. And that's there was always when we were in college, there was always that stat that they give you about how it's more expensive to go out and find a new client than it is to
keep it on.
Service and keep an existing client. And it's so true. But if you do a good job with your work and you have a good reputation, it comes full circle. And people recognize you're working hard for them. And I think that was the thread through when I was working for someone, and even now owning a business. I want the client or the customer to know that you're doing everything you can for them and you have their best interest at heart, and they see that. So even with what I do now with my work, it's all relational. Everything I do is relational. And so I guess that's been one of my strengths. But, for people that are just starting to get at this, these are things that's what makes you successful. It's building relationships. It's being authentic. It's stretching yourself, not over-promising, because then you'll under-deliver.
Yeah.
The secret has always been to under-promise and over-deliver. But, I think people, especially if you're in a position like I am, people appreciate you being genuine. Yeah. And authentic and relational.
I think that's huge. I think it's a huge part of what you, especially with what I do.
Yeah.
I can make anything on video, but it's like I always steer towards authenticity. Mm-hmm. And I steer my clients that way. And I'm like, if you go into a voice that's not your own, or you're trying to do a gimmick, mm-hmm. your customers they're gonna pick up on that. And they're not gonna believe you. And they're not gonna want to buy your product or your service.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like sometimes because people see things, oh, that's trendy, let me do it this way. I'm like, that's not really what builds long-term relationships. That's kind of like the one skill I had to develop doing mm-hmm. video production. I was like understanding, and I think my diverse background of jobs mm-hmm. helps me with that. Because for the most part, there are very few, I guess, types of businesses that I go into that I don't truly understand what they're talking. Now, also I get niched into things. I've worked at the university level, and I've done video production for universities, so I understand mm-hmm. that language. Anytime I go into education, an educational institution, because I've done stuff for public school systems, that's like I can speak when they start speaking in lingo of mm-hmm. educational lingo. Like I completely understand what they're talking about. And that really helps people. And it also, for some reason, it makes them like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. It gives them that confidence that I know what I'm doing because I can speak their language. And I think that's a huge thing in sales too, is like you got to speak their language, not yours.
You know what? It's interesting. I have this thing when I go in and talk to churches, because, when you're hiring somebody to come in from the outside, you're like, okay, who is this guy? And,
what's he selling?
Well, yeah, and they don't necessarily, what's his experience level, and is he giving me good sound advice, and does he understand our culture? And a lot of it is taking the time to get to understand them.
Yeah.
And, I always tell them when I come in and do a program with the church, it's like, look, it's got to feel like your church, your people, your culture.
Right.
Doesn't need to feel like, because like my company, it's Impact Stewardship, little plug. But my
oh no, you can plug your business. That's
there
fine.
You go. Yeah, but Impact Stewardship, we that was the thing I had always told churches is we don't want to be, I don't want to come in and take over.
No,
that's not. I mean, we have experience. We know what they need to do to be successful, but we're not going to come and take. It's a collaboration, and collaborating with someone is a lot different than coming in and consulting. I feel like consulting is one way communication a lot of times, where I feel like we're more of a collaboration where I want to take the things that they're doing, the customer, the customer of the church, what they're doing and how they're communicating with their people, and take what we do and help them. And that's what's been great is, going in and helping these churches grow and do it in a way that they're not encumbered by debt and expanding. Because, in the old days, it used to be mega churches. They were building these big buildings. Now the culture's totally changed. With what I do, it's more church planting, and you have a lot of these younger churches that are non-denominational, or they're trying to just get into a space. So we've gotten creative where we've gone in and renovated existing commercial space that's open, do all kinds of stuff. But it's been fun to work with these guys. And it's fun to watch a church, like if you start working with them now and watch where they're at 3, 4, 5 years later, and then watch where they're at 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years after that, and watch their trajectory. It's a lot of fun, but knowing that you're able to go in there and help them kind of knock down some of those goals and do some of those expansions and do some things and get them going in their communities a lot faster than they would have with that injection of capital and raising funds and doing what they need to do, and also not carrying a lot of debt on the back end, because then they have more money for ministry. So when I go in, just a little bit about what we do, that's what helps. That's how we go in and help a church, is really help them get a good start and with their project, and help them get where they're going. And it's all a lot of what, going back to my marketing background, so much of what we're doing with these churches is helping with vision. Because churches are different, because it's not fundraising. People think, oh, okay, you're a fundraiser. Not really, because all we do is work with churches. But it's about vision, because if you ask people to give, people will give if they support your organization. They're going to give. But if they really have a heart for what you're doing, they want to partner with you. And that's a big difference in what I do. So that's what's a lot of fun, is going in and helping from a marketing background, helping the messaging of how you're going to roll out a lot of the vision, short term and long term, to the people within that church. So that's what's a lot of fun for me, is I get to use my marketing background. So that's why I like to be in the field and not just run a company, but actually be in the field, because that's where I get the fulfillment. And I think that's what's hard a lot of times for these business owners, is you get stuck doing the administration. And I had to make a conscious decision several years ago. I'm like, you know what? I was 80-20. I need to be the other way around. And that's not realistic. But can I be 70-30?
Sure.
Can I be 60-40? 60% doing, 70% doing what I want to do out in the field, and curb some of that other stuff, or let someone else handle it? Sure.
I think that's and it's hard. It's hard if you don't have the money. You know what I mean? It's hard to do it if you don't have the money. But I do think that is super essential in growth, because there's so much creativity that gets lost when you're worried about, how do I structure this? How do I pay this? I got to fill out this form.
Oh, you know what?
You know, it's like all these little, like you
Yep.
said, admin work, business things that have to get done. And that takes away from the creative parts, the fun parts of what you want to do. And everybody wants to do the fun things in business, no matter what you're doing, you know, but it also comes with, you know, these other things that they don't really tell you, you know, which are super important, you know, because if you don't do them, you know, you can get in trouble, you can get behind, you can get caught up in stuff. I didn't know that that's like I said, when I went into business, I didn't know those things, you know.
Well, you know, best thing I did is years ago, I have a friend of mine, he's a friend now, but he's CPA, and they basically, I have them on retainer to handle all of our books, handle all everything. So everything's airtight. I don't need to worry about stuff. They just feed me reports. I look at stuff. I tell them what to do, what to pay, what to pay, keep up, tell them what to bill. So what that did for me is it frees me up. So only a couple times a month. It's like home when you're doing your bills, 1st and 15th. It's the same thing at work. I sit down on the 1st and 15th, and sometimes I'll do a little forecast out and see where we're going to be in 30, 60, 90 days for a cash flows perspective. But, you know, having somebody else just handle all of that stuff for me.
Yeah.
That I can't even imagine if I had to keep up with any of that stuff as a small business owner. But I mean, fortunately, we're at a size where I have to have somebody do that for me. You know,
super helpful.
Yeah,
super helpful.
I had a friend of mine. He was in business for himself, and he would sublease from me for a few years in our office space. And he had an office, and about every quarter, every 6 months, I'd see him in there burning the midnight oil. I'm like, "What you doing?" He's like, "I got to get these tax stuff in." You know, there's all the stuff that had to be done. And I was like, "You don't have a guy for that?" He's like, "No, I got somebody who keeps up with some of it," but he was taking on more of that than he needed to. And honestly, I mean, you're a creative type. I'm kind of the same way. You got to focus on your core, what you do. You can let somebody else handle that stuff. It was a big time waster and a big stressor for him.
And it's also like a catch-22 in the sense of when you don't have the money, you feel like you need to do it yourself because that's kind of like your mentality. But at the same time, it's like that prohibits you from growth. And without that growth, you don't have the money to bring in somebody to do it. It's like, how do you find that? And up front, you just got to find that balance. You know, you got to find what can I afford? But if you can do that right, I think that's some super I think that's super important, you know, because especially early on is what do I need to focus on in order to grow this business, right? What can I offload? You know, and finding people that can do it, that's tough too, you know, but they're out there. But you know, I've done that so many times. It's like I get to a point where it's like,
it's valid.
It is because your mentality is, well, it's up to me, you know.
Well, and you can only do so much. There's only so much you can handle. I'm already wearing enough hats, and you know, to do the work that I do, I have to be on site,
right?
And so, you know, like I just flew in last night from Houston, you know, so I was there in a 24-hour trip, and so you have to be in front of people, you have to be with people, and so when you're traveling, you don't have time to be doing all this stuff. And then when you come home, the last thing I want to do. I remember it was so funny a few weeks ago, you know, I got home and I went, oh my gosh, I forgot to send just a little bit of thing. I'd send payroll and invoicing to my CPA. And I just forgot. And I was like, oh gosh, payroll. Normally I like to get payroll in if the 15th is over a weekend or the 1st is over a weekend. I like to get it in before the weekend for the staff. And they don't notice any different, but I was like, okay, well, I guess payroll's going in on Monday. You know, it's going to go in, you know, after the weekend, which was fine. But it was just one of those things. You're flying, and you're going, and you're doing, and you're like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to send this email. Yeah, it takes me 5 minutes to do it, 10 minutes to do it. But you're just wearing too many hats.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat down with it's Sunday night, or, you know, we finally had to start setting alarms, but it's like, oh, we got to order books. You know, for the comic shop, and we always wait till the last minute anyway because we want people to get their orders in.
Sure.
You know, like I could do it on Sunday at noon.
Well, but then you're turning around and having to do it a second time.
Guess what the customers wait and do? They wait till the last minute too.
Sure.
So it's like, you know, So it's like I get it, man. There's like those one little thing, but that's also so important. Like I said, I got to get that in. Got to do that every time. But then you're like in bed, and it's like 10 o'clock. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that order.
Oh my gosh, you're in bed at 10 o'clock?
No. I'd like to be though.
I'm a night owl, so
you're a night owl?
Yeah, I'm a night owl. I'm much more productive.
I used to be.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I'm now more productive in the mornings.
Yeah.
Like there's times I'm like, oh man, I've got to get this video edited. I can just grind it out. And I think it's going to be way worse because I'm just going to sit here and my mind's going to drift. And then if I do it the next day, like I thought about this just the other day, Monday.
Yeah.
Or was it Monday. But the day got away from me from whatever reason. It's like if I knew I had something to do yesterday, but I thought, if I sit down and do this right now, it's just not going to be good. And so I waited and I said, let me get some sleep. Let me rest it out. And I got up early the next day and went and had it done.
Yeah.
And it was much more efficient and, the client liked it. So I was like, sometimes I have to weigh those decisions,
Hey, it's the same way for me. I had some time. I was at an airport and I had to write a blog for our site.
You write a blog?
Well, yeah, for our company. So I'm sitting there, okay, I got to do my
Klein, blogger.
Yeah, well, I do that too. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, I got 2 hours. I need to knock this out because I don't want to do it the next couple of days. I had busy days, and so then you get writer block, and you're like, and it's the same way. I'm just like, am I just gonna like put this aside, or am I gonna just bowl through? So sometimes I will make the decision to bowl through and regret it because it takes me twice as long, or I'll sleep on it. And, I'll put together some skeleton bullet points, come back and have time to reflect on it. And then, boom, you're in a creative mode at that point because you can actually think about it.
Let me ask you this, too. There was times and I would, like, have the time and I would the brain power and I would think about it and I'd go, all right, I'm going to send out some marketing emails, for the comic shop. And it was like, hey, guys, this is coming up. Maybe check out this. Hey, be aware we're going to have this sale, but when you send out just information, I mean, you need to be doing that anyway. But for me, it gets inconsistent, and I don't know what's worse, inconsistency or just not doing it at all.
Yeah, because then you feel like, again,
I don't think either one of them work well. You just got you got to do it, but at the same time, it's like, hey, man, I don't have time to sit. Like you said, you got to have some brain space to sit and type something out or to move pictures around or whatever.
Well, when you're sitting at the airport, what are you going to do? There's only so much Spotify you can listen to, or so I try to make sure that I'm filling in. I'm always watching people on planes and they're watching movies. I'm like, what would that be like?
You don't watch movies on planes?
No, because I'm working. Because when I'm off, I want to be off. And again, it's which goes back to the balance thing. When you're a business owner, it's the balance of, what? When I get home, I want to sleep. I want to rest. I want to do my hobbies. I want to see my family. I'm going to get home. I'm going to take my wife out to dinner, whatever. So it's like you don't want those distractions of like, oh, man, I've still got to send this to this guy and this to that guy. So I am very proactive. Like when I got to the airport yesterday, I got there an extra hour early. I had time, and I was like, I'm going to go check out a comic shop over here in Houston. And I was like, nope, I don't want to get stuck in this traffic. It's too close to 5 o'clock. Nope. I got to the airport, and guess what I did? I just spent that hour, and I typed up my notes and did all my stuff and got on the plane and literally got on the plane and had all my work done, and I took a nap.
That's the best when you actually do get ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's I'm going to kind of wrap this up a little bit, but, for anybody that's thinking about going into business, maybe they're young, maybe they're not, maybe they tired of their job. Because I've had a lot of people go, hey, I'm going to start a business. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, why not? I'm like, because you can't do it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't do it? I'm like, well, you've known where your paycheck comes from for a long time, and I don't think you can handle the stress of not knowing where your check comes from. So there's a lot of, maybe that's not the best advice because I don't know. But if you had to give advice to somebody out there, what would you say? Because you've done a lot of things.
Well, I think you have to, before you just cut off any lines of any income, I think like you said, you need to know where your income's coming from, and can you live off of that, and can you live off of the min and max? Because cash flow is king when you're a small business, and so I already know that there are months of the year that we are flush with cash, but then I also know the months of the year that we're going to be it's going to be harder. So you have to have a storehouse. And I think that's hard when you're going into business because you don't know those things yet. So I think you need to, if you have a side thing, like I remember when I got out of school, when I got out of school at one point, I got licensed to sell insurance and some other stuff because I was just looking for a side thing or something that could work into something more lucrative. This is when I was doing back when I was just getting into
selling the copiers.
Yeah. And so it was not long after that. Still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I didn't know what life was going to look like. And you get married, you're talking about kids, and I was looking for a side thing. And what always impressed me with the insurance was they were like, don't quit your day job until you build up your business. The insurance thing was like, you still do that on the side, and then when you build up to a certain level, then you can cut loose and make it full time. Not everybody, when you go into business for yourself, you don't have that opportunity. Some people have businesses where, I can do this as a side hustle and build it until I can make it my own. But if you're somebody who's trying to make a jump, I was fortunate because there was already an influx of business in the hopper for us as I started doing this, so I knew that we could sustain. You might have seasons, cycles during the year, or you might have a year that's off, but overall, there's a consistency, there's a pattern there of business. There's stuff's going to be there. So that's what's probably the hardest, I think, for somebody who's wanting to just start a business and make that their sole income, is just making sure that you've done a good enough market research, know what your min-max looks like as far as financials, like what you can expect from sales. Get a good handle on overhead. That's one thing that, like for us right now, we're having to go up on our fees. I like to keep fees down, but we've had to go up because, we're dealing with all the travel increases. A hotel that used to be $100 is now $150. A rental car that was under $100 is now over $100. Flying out someplace was $350, now it's $500 or more. So all of those things are real cost, and you have to figure out when you're fulfilling, and again, it's different, I guess, for people that are producing a goods versus how we're service-based, but just get a good handle on your actual cost, because that's probably the thing that you're going to need the most as you grow this, is you've got to be out there in the field, or you've got to be the one making sure the sales are happening, or fulfillment's happening. So you don't have time to be dealing with all the nuts and bolts. You need to make sure you have some good structures in place. So, I guess it's pretty broad depending on what kind of business you're trying to do. But if you're just a general small business starting, just be prepared. You're going to be wearing a lot of hats. You're going to wear a lot of hats.
True story.
Yeah.
That part is true.
And you'll be a blogger before you know it.
Oh, man, I can't wait. Can't wait. I've tried to do the blogging thing. I guess I get stuck where why would anybody want to listen to my opinion? I think that's why I don't do like when I do these podcasts, like I really want your opinion as opposed to my opinion.
You know what I started doing? What are the things that I get asked all the time, or the mistakes that I see people make all the time? And that's what I sit down and I write about, because you become a content expert.
Yeah.
Having done this enough, it's like,
I think the term is thought leader.
Thought leader. Well, whatever. It's like School of Hard Knocks. It's like people always say, when you get in a presentation, and they're like, well, what questions should we be asking that we're not? But I think sometimes it's what assumptions are we making that are not correct, because I have to go in there and help navigate them around. So I think once you do, I'm in a different spot now because I'm on the back end of this, where I've been doing this a while, where I can sit down and come at somebody as like a knowledge expert, like they understand, or whatever you called it.
Yeah.
They understand.
Thought leader.
Thought leader.
I think that is the new trend term.
Is that the new trend term?
So.
Yeah.
You're a thought leader in your field.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but occasionally I do have a good thought. But
that's great.
Was it a stopped clock is right 2 times a day? So I do have my occasional thoughts or
that is
things.
So true with me.
Yeah, so at least twice a day I'm good. But yeah, I think just for people who are really wanting to think about doing something like this, or maybe you're in the middle of it. You're not alone either. I think there's a lot of, I would say the other thing too is if you're going into doing something like this, or even if you're new, you're not alone. There's kind of a community when you're a small business owner. I mean, I talk to people all the time, and there's kind of a camaraderie there because we're all dealing with similar issues.
Yeah.
You may be totally different type of business, but you're a small business owner. So I think being able to get connected with other people that like-minded or struggling, you can find some good resources from people who are walking through it, like say, hey, you might want to talk to so-and-so, or this is a good book to read, or this is a good thing to
I think
research.
it also expands your network. Because they have a network, and you just don't. You might have access to who they have access to, and if they like you, they're maybe willing to share access to their network.
Sure.
I think there's huge value. I think that's how I got a lot of my business. Was somebody else that was a business owner said, "Hey, you should talk to this guy," and people hire who they like.
They do.
You may not be as good as the next guy at what you do. I'm not saying that right. It's like maybe there are other people that are a little more talented in, say, video production. But if they like you, they'll hire you first. Now, if you can do both.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, if you can, again, with anything, it's relationship. It's all relationship. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, my son is in college right now. And I keep telling him he's getting through school, and I said, you need to start developing some relationships with different people in the different fields and stuff, because they, I think, especially when, I'm in a position where, my kids are all 19 to 25 range. So it's like when you see a kid out there hustling and working hard, you want to help them. And so, I think it's like that with anybody. You see somebody really trying, and you remember what it was like, you want to help. And so I think that's kind of like, I think back to how people stuck their neck out for me and gave me a chance. And so I really think that, with these kids, like watching my son come through school, it's like, it's all about relationship and creating starting to network now, because you never know where that'll take you. I mean, there'll be somebody that you'll network with in 10 years from now. There'll be something where
they'll call you. Yeah, that happens so much. And it's also, I think, people just, the conversation I hear even some of the businesses next to us, it's like, it's so hard to find good help. It's so hard to find good help,
Yeah.
But it's because those skills haven't been developed, and it's not so much the specificity of the job. It's what they call in soft skills, but I don't think they're soft skills, but it's, can you show up on time? Are you reliable? Are you willing to? I remember when my niece was in college, and she wanted to do sports marketing, and she had an opportunity to be with UK Athletics on their team as a college intern. And I said, listen, don't do what everybody else in your family has done. You need to go in there and you be the first one there. You be the last one to leave.
Yeah.
And no matter what they ask you to do, don't ever let them hear you complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Just do those three things,
Yeah.
And she did. And her first year was tough. Like, she had to stand out there she didn't get to go to the UK basketball games, which is the big show, right? She had to go to the women's soccer field, and stand out in the rain and make sure that there was an opportunity for kids to sign autographs and stuff like that.
You have to pay your dues.
She did that. And not only did she work her way through that first year, they asked her to work in the office the next year. And then the last year she was there, she actually got paid. So, but again, she has to don't go in there like the rest of your family and complain about stuff. Just go in there and do the job. And it takes you so far by showing up on time, putting in the hours, and just having a positive attitude, or at least pretend to have a positive attitude.
Well, yeah, it's true. Well, showing even when you don't you're in a situation where you're like, there's no way this person has a positive attitude, but they are anyway, that shows a lot about your ability to, it shows a maturity level.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, there's times where you're like, I really don't want to be doing this. But you do it with a smile. You do what you need to do. And people
appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it shows a lot about you. It tells a lot about your personality and your ability to work with other people.
I'm going to leave you with this thought. I didn't come up with this one either.
Tommyism. This is another Louis Pasteurism.
No, this actually came from my high school basketball coach.
Okay.
And he actually told us this. You know, our coach was really tough on us, but I'm going to leave you with this. You learn a lot about a person when you're losing, when they're losing. You learn a lot about someone when they're losing. Everybody wants to be around them when they're winners.
Okay.
You learn a lot about the character of a person when they're losing.
Well, you do.
And for all of the things that my high school coach said or yelled at me, that was one of the biggest things I took away from it. I've always thought about that. It's like, what are you going to do when the chips are down? You've been there, man. You know, been there a lot. And it's like, you didn't waste that time. I think that's what separates, you know, those who are going to endure from those who are just going to go off and do something else.
That's good.
So
it's strong.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to end it, man.
That's awesome.
Hey, man, thanks for coming out and hanging with me.
That was good.
Always good to talk to you. You're so fun to hear your stories. You've always got the best stories. So I know I'll probably have you on here again at some point. Maybe we can delve a little bit deeper.
Oh, this was fun. Yeah. Well, you know, and I think it's kind of fun talking through this stuff because, you know, we all sometimes live in a bubble, but we're not.
We're not.
We're all connected. And I think sometimes hearing these stories, you're like, hey, you hear a little of yourself in these stories, you know.
So, well, man, we'll definitely see you around the comic shop. And again, like I said, thanks for coming out, bud.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Thanks, Tommy.